All right, hello guys. So this is lesson 23. Here's our vocabulary words for this week. We have yarn. People use yarn to knit sweaters, hats, and mittens, and this is a photograph of yarn. It's basically like string. And strands. The strands of yarn are tied into knots at the bottom of this rug. So when they make rugs, they're actually using yarn and knotting it over and over again and weaving it to make it. Spinning. It takes a lot of practice spinning chunks of wool into thin yarn. And that thing in the picture right there is a loom. It's called a loom. And then the dye. These shirts are soaked in dye to make them colorful. It's kind of like tie-dye if you've ever done that. Weave. This woman will weave dried grasses into baskets. This week, you have an optional craft activity to weave something yourself. Number 6, sharpening. This pencil does not need sharpening anymore. So it is all the way sharp. It doesn't need any more sharpening. 7 is duplicated. Some colors on this rug are duplicated. They appear again and again. Number 8, delicious. This baker makes delicious cakes. They are very tasty. So the second sentence tells us what delicious means. Delicious is tasty. And I went a little quick. They appear again and again means duplicated. It means it goes over and over again. It's copied. So this week we're looking at using details to draw conclusions. So in The Goat and the Rug, the authors do not tell you everything you need to know. Ask questions about details in the words and pictures. Looking for text evidence will help you make a smart guess about what is happening. Making a smart guess is called drawing a conclusion. And charts like this can help us. This is an important thing to learn how to do, is to draw conclusions from our reading, because the author doesn't always say everything so plainly. And then summarizing is when you tell the most important parts, but you don't tell everything that happened, and you use your own words. So that's also something I would like you guys to practice when talking about this story afterward. I'm going to move on. So our target goal is to draw conclusions. The genre is narrative nonfiction. So it tells a true story about a topic. You're going to look for a setting that is real, events in time order, and facts and information. And then our authors this week are Charles L. Blood and Martin Link. They wrote it together from the point of view of Geraldine the goat. So it may seem like it's fiction because it's from the point of view of the goat, but it is actually nonfiction. They wrote this book about Native American crafts and games. Martin Link was once a ranger in the National Park Service in Arizona. And then our illustrator this week, who does the pictures, is Nancy Winslow Parker. So the story is called The Goat in the Rug by Geraldine, as told to Charles L. Blood and Martin Link, illustrated by Nancy Winslow Parker. So our essential question this week is, how is art connected to the past? My name is Geraldine, and I live in a place called Window Rock with my Navajo friend, Glen May. It's called Window Rock because it has a big round hole in it that looks like a window open to the sky. Glen May is called Glen May most of the time because it's easier to say than her Indian name, Glenaspa. In English, that means something like female warrior. But she's really a Navajo weaver. I guess that's why one day she decided to weave me into a rug. I remember it was a warm, sunny afternoon. Glen May had spent most of the morning sharpening a large pair of scissors. I had no idea what she was going to use them for, but it didn't take me long to find out. So remember, this is from the point of view of the goat, but it's about a real person who made things from wool. So let's see. Before I knew what was happening, I was on the ground and Glenmay was clipping my wool in great long strands. It's called mohair, really. That's because it's goat's hair. It didn't hurt at all, but I admit I kicked up my heels some. I'm very ticklish for a goat. I might have looked a little naked and silly afterwards, but my, did I feel nice and cool. So I decided to stick around and see what would happen next. So I want to ask, why do you think the author is choosing to have Geraldine tell the story? So because Geraldine is a goat, she'll tell the story differently than a person would, and it might make it a little bit more interesting and funny, but still be nonfiction. So it's kind of like a fun twist on how to write nonfiction. Instead of informational passages with photographs and facts all the time, this is like making it a story, which makes it a little more interesting. And what do you think it means to kick up my heels some? I mean, she put up a little bit of a fuss. She probably squirreled around a little bit because she was ticklish, talking about the goat. So here on the next page, the first thing Glenmay did was chop up roots from a yucca plant. The roots made a soapy, rich lather when she mixed them with water. She washed my wool in the suds until it was clean and white. So that's something that they actually did. The Navajo Indians would wash the wool or mohair with the yucca plant for soap. After that, a little bit of me, you might say, was hung up in the sun to dry. When my wool was dry, Glenmay took out 2 large square combs with many teeth. By combing my wool between these carding combs, as they're called, she removed any bits of twigs or burrs and straightened out the fibers. She told me it helped make a smoother yarn for spinning. So why would there be twigs and burrs in the wool? Well, the wool used to be the coat or the hair on the goat, right? So the goat might have collected twigs and burrs as it rubbed up against plants or other things. So now they're combing it to make sure it's clean and free of knots. So then Glenmay carefully started to spin my wool, one small bundle at a time, into yarn. I was beginning to find out it takes a long while to make a Navajo rug. Again and again, Glenmay twisted and pulled the wool. Then she spun it around a long, thin stick she called a spindle. As she twisted and pulled and spun, the finer, stronger, and smoother the yarn became. So far, if we're thinking about the events, so far what happened in order? Well, there was a goat, and Glenmay, they told us where she lived, and then Glenmay was sharpening a pair of scissors. Then she cut the goat's wool, or mohair, and then she washed the hair. Then she combed the hair, and now she's spinning the hair. A few days later, Glenmay and I went for a walk. She said we were going to find some special plants she would use to make dye. I didn't know what dye meant, but it sounded like a picnic to me. I do love to eat plants. That's what got me into trouble. So here on her list, she has rabbit brush, wild onion, cliff rose, sumac, juniper, walnuts, dock. What do you think's gonna happen? She buys all these plants and he's saying he loves plants. How would he get into trouble? Maybe he's gonna eat the plants she buys and then she won't have any plants to dye the wool. While Glenmay was out looking for more plants, I ate every one she had already collected in her bucket. Delicious. Uh-oh. The next day, Glenmay made me stay home while she walked miles to a store. She said the dye she could buy wasn't the same as the kind she makes from plants, but since I'd made such a pig of myself, it would have to do. So now Glenmay is going to have to buy the dyes instead of making them herself because Glenmay ate them. I was really worried that she would still be angry with me when she got back. She wasn't, though. And pretty soon she had 3 big potfuls of dye boiling over a fire. Why would you need more than 1 pot? Well, if you have different colors, each color would need to be in its own pot. Then I saw what Glenmay had meant by dyeing. She dipped my white wool into 1 pot and it turned pink. She dipped it in again. It turned a darker pink. By the time she finished dipping it in and out and hung it up to dry, it was a beautiful deep red. After that, she dyed some of my wool brown and some of it black. I couldn't help wondering if those plants I'd eaten would turn all of me the same colors. Look at the little thought bubble. So why do you think that Geraldine thinks she'll turn red, brown, and black? Because those were the colors Glenmay was intending to dye the wool, and Geraldine ate all the plants that would have made those dyes. But it doesn't work that way. The plants in your stomach won't make your fur turn colors. So that's kind of silly, but that's why she thought that. So while I was worrying about that, Glenmay started to make our rug. She took a ball of yarn and wrapped it around and around 2 poles. I lost count when she'd reached 300 wraps. I guess I was too busy thinking about what it would be like to be the only red, white, black, and brown goat at Window Rock. So can you imagine having to spin this yarn so many times? Very time consuming. It takes a long time to make a carpet from hand. It wasn't long before Glenmay had finished wrapping. Then she hung the poles with the yarn on a big wooden frame. It looked like a picture frame made of logs. She called it a loom. After a whole week of getting ready to weave, Glenmay started. So it took her a whole week to get ready. She began weaving at the bottom of the loom. Then 1 strand of yarn at a time, our rug started growing toward the top. A few strands of black, a few of brown, a few of red, in and out, back and forth, until in a few days the pattern of our rug was clear to see. Our rug grew very slowly, just as every Navajo weaver before her had done for hundreds and hundreds of years. Glenmay formed a design that would never be duplicated. That means nobody could ever copy her design because it was hers alone. Because each weaver is different and they respect each other and don't copy each other. Then at last the weaving was finished, but not until I'd checked it quite thoroughly in front and in back did I let Glenmay take our rug off the loom. There was a lot of me in that rug. I wanted it to be perfect, and it was. Since then, my wool has grown almost long enough for Glenmay and me to make another rug. I hope we do very soon, because you see, there aren't too many weavers like Glenmay left among the Navajos. So why do you think Navajo rugs are so special? Well, if there's not many Navajo weavers left, and because it takes such a long time for a Navajo weaver to make a rug, and they're never copied, that makes those rugs very special. And there's only one goat like me, Geraldine. This is the true story of a weaver and her goat who lived in the Navajo Nation at Window Rock, Arizona. So why do you think the author titled this story The Goat in the Rug? Well, it was Geraldine, the goat. It was her wool that was used to make the rug. Oh, I hope you enjoyed the story, guys. Happy learning today.